All right, guys, welcome back to the High Man podcast. It is episode 24. It is Friday, the 3rd of February, currently 22 past 5 in the evening. Thanks for joining us again. Much appreciated. It's hosted by yours truly, K-Lock, and my co-host, Pete. How are we doing today, Pete? All right?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good. Yeah, so today is going to be a discussion on a Japanese philosophy or way of living. This thing called Ikigai. We're going to discuss kind of shortly the origins of it, and then there's 4 main components to it. We'll go through those, and then we'll kind of talk about maybe why it's important, some of the challenges, and that's going to basically be what the discussion revolves around today. So we'll just get stuck straight in, I guess. So Ikigai is made up of 2 words. It's spelled Ikigai. The first word is Iki, and that means life. And then the second word is Gai, and that means kind of like value, worth, or reason. Putting that together, it translates roughly to something along the lines of your reason for being. Ikigai is good because it kind of helps you identify the necessary ingredients for getting your life into a flow state, and helps you pursue a sustainable and useful activity for the world. So I might have mentioned it has Japanese origins. More specifically, it came from Okinawa in Japan, one of the islands to the south of the mainland. It came about in I think it's called the Heian period, I think that's how you say it, from the years 794 to 1185. So a decent amount of time ago, about 1,000, 1,500 years ago nearly. Also a fun fact for the island of Okinawa, that is where karate originated. Kara, that word means empty, and then te means hands. And you kind of think, why would a martial art translate to empty hands? But it's because I think the Japanese national army or some sort of external force invaded the island, took over it, and it demanded all the weapons be handed over from all of the inhabitants. And the Okinawans agreed because they knew they had this self-defense and their weapons were their hands. So I just found that out and I thought it was pretty interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you. Karate, empty hands. Yeah. Might come up in a pub quiz, you never know. But yeah, so back to Ikigai. It seems that maybe in today's modern world, a lot of people fall into the trap of working a 9 to 5. You go Monday to Friday and then you enjoy your weekend, but Sunday night comes around and then you start dreading Monday. And I saw one guy say something like, you're doing something of a disservice to yourself when you're doing something you hate, and you're doing a disservice to those around you as well, especially if you're at a job that you don't enjoy, but the people you work with, they really enjoy their job. And I thought that was kind of nice. You want to be a person that brings value to anything you do, but you also want to enjoy what you do as well. But a question I had was is it kind of realistic for all humans to do what they enjoy and then also make money from it? Do you think that might be a realistic thing that can happen, Pete? Or
yeah, it's hard to say. It seems like the answer is probably not. It'd be great if everyone could do what they enjoy and make a living off of it. But realistically, there are a lot of jobs which are essential for the world to run as it does. And you need people to do them, and they're not going to be enjoyable. What do you think? Do you think everyone can have a job they enjoy?
I don't think it's possible. Although I feel like people's we'll get onto this as well in Ikigai, but your mindset can kind of influence it a bit. You might be doing a job that specifically you don't necessarily enjoy, but the benefits you get from having that job give you a lot of enjoyment. So you might be doing for example, a finance job. You kind of are a bit got to be here 9 till 5 or 8 till 6 in some cases, or even worse. But the enjoyment comes from having that financial freedom on the weekends and the holidays to experience anything you want if you do have enough money. So I feel you can change the way you think about your job to make sure that you enjoy life outside of your job enough for it to be worth it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's difficult as well because everyone assumes that they'll be happiest if they didn't have any responsibilities like a job. But realistically, I think when people are stripped of their responsibilities, then it does create this kind of nihilistic state where your actions don't really have any consequence. And like most people will just default to hedonistic type behaviors, just pursuing comfort and entertainment, really.
Yeah.
And, you know, most people aren't going to push themselves unless there's a reason to. And I think the meaning in life often comes from taking on responsibilities and stuff. So it's not so black and white to say your life is less fulfilling or happy or meaningful because you have to do things you don't like sometimes. Yeah, it's not quite black and white.
Yeah, it kind of links into that discussion we had. I can't remember what episode it was, but it was kind of like, is life more so about happiness and success, or can you change the way you value success in life by just thinking about contemplation and being content with what you have? And like we discussed it extensively, like doing these things that bring you discomfort, they are terrible in the moment, but they do develop you as a character and help you grow. And without anything like that, it seems like the world and the individuals in it would be a lot sadder.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so Ikigai, some people would argue maybe is a bit of a response to that. We'll discuss that a little bit in the future of this episode. But firstly, it's made up of 4 components. And then these 4 components eventually can overlap to create Ikigai. But the first component, the first component of Ikigai is doing something that you're good at. So like you can learn skills and stuff, but like everyone kind of has a different level of innate skill. Some people have different IQs, motor skills, empathy, and strength. So finding something that you're good at is kind of the first step to Ikigai. And this person said in this video I watched, he was like, people usually focus on improving things they're bad at, and sometimes they fall into the trap of rejecting things that they're good at. Do you think that's maybe a true statement to a large extent, or what would you say?
You know, I'm not sure. Initially, I'd kind of think it seems more logical that people would be drawn to things that they're good at. But why did he explain why he thinks people are drawn to things that they're bad at and away from things? Like, what was his reasoning for that?
It was just a short video, so he didn't really go into depth when he said that. He just said he thought people usually focus on improving things that they're bad at, and then they reject things that they're good at. I can sort of understand maybe like you need to improve your physical health, so you go to the gym, but you might be bad at that, or maybe something along the lines of that, or I don't know, maybe you need to have a certain job that you don't enjoy or that you're not very good at because it pays the bills. Maybe it's something like that, but I thought it was a bit out of touch, personally.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it is a thing of people being more self-conscious about their weaknesses than kind of oriented towards their strengths, so they'll focus on their weaknesses. But yeah, I kind of feel like it's hard for people to really know what they're good at. It seems like a bit of a paradox. Like, do what you're good at, but if you don't practice something, then you're probably, unless you're like really talented, which you probably shouldn't rely on because not everyone is, then, you know, you're not gonna be good at anything. Like, most people probably aren't that good at anything when they first start it. So how can you ever become good at something if you're not willing to go through the stage of being bad at it? So I think that's a tricky thing, because obviously doing what you're good at sounds great in principle, but not everyone knows what they're good at, and it takes time to become better at things. And I kind of think with this whole conversation about purpose, that being so idealistic to say, yeah, do what you're good at. Like, I'm not sure it's the best response for people, because there might not be anything that they're immediately good at, but that doesn't mean they can't become good at something, even if they're bad to start with.
Yeah, I agree. And it could be a case of like, you might be good at one thing, but if you did put the time and effort into something else, you could be even better at that, and then that could be something that you really did excel in, but you just focused on what you were good at. So I think it's a little bit that, yeah, that statement would like confuse me a little bit, or like I had a bit of debate in my mind if the geezer was really thinking what he was saying. But yeah, so the second part of Ikigai is doing something that you love to do. This bit he's explained quite well, to be fair. Like he said, you might, like his example was like, you might love being a YouTuber, but one aspect of being a YouTuber is like editing. Then you've got filming, then you've got planning. You might love being a YouTuber, but there might be one aspect that you don't enjoy. So you could love planning and filming your content, but you might really hate doing the editing. A way to kind of shift your focus to make sure that you do the activity you don't necessarily enjoy is a shift in mindset. And it's kind of it's really necessary that you do the task that you don't like, because then you can fully enjoy the whole experience of being a YouTuber, for example. But he did go on to say he thought that you should listen to your intuition and maybe let go of a pursuit and explore a different pursuit if you feel like the one like factor of that pursuit is so negative that it overrides the positive and love for that pursuit. That I thought was a little bit out of touch as well, because it's like, it's not as simple as just doing something that you love and then you find there's one part of it that you really don't enjoy, so you can just switch over to something else, because not nobody, but most people don't have the luxury of having financial backing where they can just go to and fro from different activities. So I think it's a bit of a grind if you're going to try and find something that you do truly love. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like it's similar to what I just said about like being good at things. Like, you maybe won't know whether you love something until you spend enough time doing it, and maybe until you actually get good enough at it to enjoy it, because it's less enjoyable doing things when you're not good at them. So yeah, there's that issue that it's difficult. It's hard to judge. Like most people, it's all well and good saying, "Oh, do something you're good at and do something you love." It's like, well, most people don't know what that is, and I don't know. Maybe we'll get more into like what people recommend for trying to find out what it is. But yeah, what you're saying there about like there will be parts of what you do which you don't enjoy at all, but you still need to do them. But yeah, I think that's a very important point. Although it kind of, I feel like the idea of having to do what you love maybe breaks down a little bit because of that. Because it's like, okay, well, I don't love this part of it. Do I love it then? I guess maybe as a whole you do, but it's complicated, and yeah, well, yeah, I'm not sure. What do you think?
I mean, it kind of begs the question, like, can you truly love anything in the world, like, wholly? Like, a lot of people say that they love their partner, or they love food and all this stuff, but it's like you were saying, it seems kind of impossible to really truly love every aspect of one thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's quite a natural thing. But then there is the difficulty of knowing if it is something that you want to pursue. But I think maybe simply measuring, if you can, it's going to be difficult for anybody to measure, but measure the benefits against the drawbacks. That's kind of what it comes down to, I think.
Mm.
Like, are these like benefits that I get from like satisfaction or like love or accomplishment or like a sense of meaning, is that worthwhile, considering that I have to go through the hard days of training or the hard days of like emotional damage or whatever, because it could be relationships, a job, or anything. But I think it's really difficult to measure anything like that because it's so subjective. Like when you're trying to think about, let's say, for example, you're in a relationship with someone and you're trying to think about, is the good better than the bad? If you're measuring that from a point of view when you've just come out of a fucking argument with that person, you're going to be a bit biased towards the bad. So I think something like measuring the benefits and drawbacks has to be done over like a longer period of time than just like one evening or like a few days. And then that's just a bit more, like that's just more effort, which is going to put people off, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was about to say there, actually, like you kind of said it yourself, that your emotions will vary depending at different times. So something you might love some of the time, you might hate another time. So to base it on your emotion of like love of doing it or happiness when doing it, like emotions are quite a fickle thing, and I don't know if it's the best option to try and base what you do based on your emotions about it. But what you said there is maybe a better way of approaching it, about kind of treating it in the long term. So like over however long a period, but more of a long-term period, like am I overall enjoying this? And is it overall fulfilling to you? Not just in a short period of time.
Yeah. Don't be like kind of less reactionary to it and more, I don't know what the word would be, more due diligent. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
But then, okay, so moving on to the third point. So first and second is doing something that you're good at, doing something that you love to do. And then thirdly, which I quite like, it might be a little bit optimistic and a bit like dreamland, but it's doing something that you think the world needs. So like your activity that you try and pursue, it should benefit the world. Otherwise, it can be kind of regarded as just a passion. So like you might, for example, love archery and you're good at it, you love it, but the world doesn't need it. And then it's just kind of a passion, which isn't a bad thing. I think people should like maybe not have 1,000 different passions, but have 1 or 2 or 3 like hobbies that they really do enjoy, because it just gives you a sense of fulfillment, I think. But yeah, so the question that you would ask yourself would be, how can I, with my skill set, make the world a better place? That's how this person kind of framed it. Do you think that's appropriate, or do you think it's difficult to kind of judge what the world actually needs?
I think it is. I think it's difficult to judge what the world needs. Like a lot of jobs, like it's going to be very difficult. It seems like quite, well, obviously very optimistic, and you could even say like idealistic, to think that you can have a job which you enjoy, that you're really good at, and that has a positive impact on the world. And I think having a positive impact in the world is difficult to kind of define, because most jobs, at least at the start, is not going to have like a wide scale impact. Like it's difficult to tell the impact of your small actions. Like, I don't know, if you're a really good computer programmer or something, and you like in the day-to-day activities of like writing some code to fix some minor problem on this program, and maybe the program helps someone to, I don't know, it helps someone to do something, but maybe it's a medial task, and it's kind of like, okay, is this really making the world a better place? Like, it's quite a grand statement, but but maybe, I think maybe you can think on a smaller scale, like, okay, is what I'm doing having kind of a net positive impact? Is it helping at least kind of a small number of people? Is it helping solve a problem which will make people's lives better? Like, that's probably an important thing.
Yeah,
But I think, yeah, maybe with any sort of skill set, you can hopefully use it in a way where you do get that kind of feeling from the job you're doing.
yeah, I agree. Like, it seems like today, and like maybe for the last 10, 15, 20 years, or probably longer to be fair, like you've got social enterprises that their mission and their like fundamental reason for being is to help the local community and then go to like grow that to a wider scale. I think they do an amazing job, and like they're so necessary for underprivileged people. But maybe would you argue if everybody took on this Ikigai belief, and rather than saying to themselves, "Can I help the world?" they said to themselves, "Can I just help one person?" If everybody in the world did that, would there be a need for like these social enterprises and these charities? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea if everyone focused more on the small positive impacts they had rather than trying to make wide scale change all at once, which obviously probably has its place, but on an individual level, talking about what the individual should focus on, I think, focusing more on having a positive impact on a small number of people, probably in your local community, before trying to spread that to wide scale change in the world type of thing. Like, it's maybe good to just try and, baby steps, like help out in small ways at first, have small positive impacts, and then over the time of doing that, you can obviously build your skill set and build your competency to the point where later on you'll be more effective at hopefully solving bigger problems. But I think it's a lot more practical for people to focus on what small positive impacts they can maybe have on just certain individuals' lives, whether it's like helping out someone else's business, like providing them a good quality service, or even if you're like a tradesman, just helping out this one person doing a good job with their things so they don't have any more problems. Like, these kind of small positive impacts are, I think they are very important, and it's easy to kind of underestimate how important they are.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can have an appreciation for like the context of where this kind of philosophy kind of, I don't know if the philosophy is the right word, but I'm going to say that anyway. I think like have an appreciation for the context of it. Like, this came about like over 1,000 years, 1,000-ish years ago, and like maybe when they were saying to themselves the phrase "the world," realistically, like, you might have had travel by sea with boats and shit, but like people's world was genuinely probably like a few miles radius. There's no like real connectivity to any other place than their hometown and like a few miles out in every direction. So I think that statement that we first talked about is like, what can you do with your skill set to make the world a better place? Maybe they are referring to just that small scale like situation, which I think is probably more appropriate, like, as we just discussed.
Yeah. So another aspect to this is, I think there is a certain amount of work someone will have to do in kind of a selfish and individual way, just trying to get better at something themselves before they can really help other people with it. Like, an example I can think of is a great jiu-jitsu instructor. I think that has a very positive impact on people's lives in a direct way. But for that person, they need to kind of have the selfish goal of getting really good at jiu-jitsu themselves in order to do that. How important do you think it is for people to kind of be selfish in their interests at a certain point, especially when building a level of competency?
I think there probably is a need for selfishness, but in that example you gave, I disagree with you, because with jiu-jitsu, like, you can be selfish and focus on bettering your own like capabilities, but jiu-jitsu, although it's kind of like one of the most individual sports you can get, so much of it is based around community, and like, you roll with someone and then you talk to each other about how you did and like if you could have improved on this move or that move, and like, even if you're trying to be selfish and bet yourself, inevitably in jiu-jitsu you do help each other. I don't know if that can apply to everything else, But in that example, I would disagree and say you can kind of become the best and enhance yourself while bringing people up with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the idea is that you can, by helping yourself, that will have like knock on effects which help improve other people. I kind of feel like that's true for, that would be true for most things in life, but in the short term, you do have to be a little bit selfish, and it's difficult to think like I'm doing this for other people, like to improve yourself. Like, do you think people should try and adopt the mindset of when they're doing something which is kind of just focused on improving themselves, whether that be just trying to build their own business or like get better at jiu-jitsu, as the example I gave? Like, should people try and think, oh, the reason I'm doing this is because I can eventually help other people, or that I might help other people as like a side effect during the process? Or should people, I'm not sure that's necessarily the best way to motivate people, more than maybe having a bit more of a selfish motivation, which on the surface might seem less moral, but in the grand scheme of things, if it motivates them more to improve and that has knock-on positive effects on other people, then it might be a good thing overall. So yeah, how do you think people should focus their motivation in terms of
that? It's difficult. Like, that makes you think about. I think it was. I can't remember who it was. It was like an economist in the 70s, not Mill or something like that. He said the purpose of a business is to provide value for its shareholders. But following up from that, and definitely in more recent years, we've kind of got like stakeholder theory. So not only does that include shareholders, but the community, employees, the local environment, the government, blah, 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 all the people that have an interest in the business. So before, it seemed that if you just pursue what's good for you and your business, that is how you get successful. But more recent beliefs seems to focus on creating shared value, doing what's best for the business, as long as it does coincide with what's best for other stakeholders. I think it is possible to do that. Like, you see examples of businesses such as like I think it's like Lush or the Body Shop, or maybe both. They offer great products that are like animal and cruelty free, and they're also more environmentally friendly. So they're kind of helping more stakeholders rather than just making an absolute profit on products that kind of damage environments or like are cruel to animals and all that shit. So I do think businesses, and maybe every aspect of life, there is an opportunity for people to create shared value rather than just being selfish. And I think that is probably the way to get long-term success. You could maybe give an example of, like, in contrast to that, Coca-Cola. You could say like Coca-Cola fundamentally makes a drink that's bad for you. They do fucking terrible shit for the environment. They make bare profit, and they probably don't pay employees enough. But I would argue they maybe do pay employees enough, because that's why they're so successful, because employees are such a huge part of creating the product. So I don't know, it's difficult in my mind to know the answer, but I'd sway more to the idea of creating shared value and helping other people rather than being just selfish.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just think about it there, actually. I think having other people as your motivation is often a more powerful motivator, because your own kind of emotions and motivations can fluctuate. Whereas when you're doing it for other people, and you know that your actions, like it kind of removes the barrier of needing to feel like doing something, because you're not doing it because you want to. You're not doing it because you feel like doing it. You're doing it because this other person, you want to have this positive benefit for this other person. Like, an example I think of is, I remember, like, sometimes obviously I enjoy doing jiu-jitsu, But then, like, just before a competition, sometimes I'll be thinking, like, why the fuck, like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the point? Like, I don't want to be here right now. And something that I'd think that would help motivate me to want to get on there was thinking, like, yeah, I want to do this because I want to make my coach proud, because I know that would be, like, meaningful to him. So that kind of removes my own motivation there. And that's, I think it's a very powerful thing. And I can imagine that on a wide scale, that focusing more on the positive impact you can have on other people can help you get through points where you might give up on it, even if you were just doing it for yourself.
Yeah, I hear that. I agree with you. I think there is, though, also a risk maybe of, like, if you're doing something for the sake of others, are you kind of forgetting why you're doing it for yourself, which can be a bit of an issue for a lot of people, especially people with, like, strict parents that force them to go to university to do a certain degree to get a certain job. Which is kind of, I think it also applies to maybe to parents as well. Like, they might be pursuing a job, they might be doing a job, because it's putting money on the table and food and a roof and all that shit. And they're sacrificing their true dream of, like, setting up their own, like, food truck or something like that, for the sake of their children. But I guess, what is life if you're not living for other people? I'm sure there is an answer to that that's quite satisfying, but it seems like living for other people is kind of what brings you joy, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But yeah, so that was the third point, doing something that the world kind of needs. The fourth point, a bit more practical now, it is make sure you're able to get paid for your activity. Like, you need to be able to generate income, otherwise what you're doing is kind of just a hobby. This one is probably the most difficult part of it for certain things. Other things, it might be quite easy. Like, if you're fucking sick at music and you can just make money off that if you're, like, a great performer and all this. But other more niche things might be a bit more difficult. What's your ideas on that?
Yeah, I think you need to, when you're going into something, before you go into it, you need to kind of have an idea of, is it actually possible to make as much money as I want to from this? Because there are certain things, no matter how, maybe less so nowadays, like, it's possible to monetize a lot more things nowadays, but it might just be, you might just be making it extremely difficult for yourself even if there is something that you enjoy and that maybe has a positive impact and that you're good at, but it's just not monetizable. Like, it might just not be scalable or sellable in a certain way. You need to kind of think about that before going into something. I don't think it's possible to monetize anything. I think you need to kind of pre-select for something that probably that other people have made money off before. I mean, there's a first time for everything, but unless you actually have a clear idea of, like, how someone is going to give you money to do this thing, then there's not much promise unless you at least have that bit of pre-selection.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's kind of like the idea of being an entrepreneur. And I've just literally started a unit in university about entrepreneurs and, like, the theories behind it. It's only week one, but what I've, like, kind of researched so far is, like, entrepreneurs essentially need to be people with great judgment and also, like, great cognition. Like, it's not necessarily about just having a good business idea. It's about being able to perceive the changes in the market and then act upon what you think the future is going to look like. And if you're just simply pursuing something that you're good at and that you enjoy and the world needs at the moment, it's not necessarily going to make sure that you're going to make money from it in the future. So it's a little bit, that's why I said it's kind of like the trickiest one to kind of do, I think. Getting paid for anything, getting paid for different things is quite easy, but getting paid for anything and everything is kind of a bit more challenging. It's where this idea of Ikigai, I stumbled upon it like a year ago. And I just read like really briefly what it was, and I was kind of thinking, it seems really interesting. It seems very applicable to most people, but upon like further research recently, it seems a bit, I don't know, it seems a bit dreamy and maybe not as realistic as it could be. Saying that though, there was a guy, what was his name? A guy called Tim Tamashiro, who he's got Japanese heritage, but I think he's like an American or he's Japanese or something. He's been quite successful in like music and stuff, but he recently in the last year, well, when I was watching the video, he said in the last year up to that video, he tried to find his Ikigai. And he found his Ikigai to be something as simple as a two-word phrase, and his was to delight. So he simply just wanted to every day make somebody smile or like make someone laugh and bring this joy to different people. And I thought it was quite a nice interpretation, like more of a modern day interpretation of Ikigai, rather than centering your whole life around it, which I think would be very challenging. Trying to incorporate it more part-time into your life is, I think that's something that's more rational and more applicable to most people. So I thought he was quite refreshing, his take on it. But a reason I saw that it might be so important is because it comes from Okinawa, and that Japanese island is a blue zone, and that's got like a blue zone is a place that has loads of people that are 100 years or older, and they are considered blue zones, and they're considered like the best places to live in the world almost, because you live long, healthy and happy lives. And if Ikigai originated in Okinawa, a lot of the people in that blue zone are trying to incorporate Ikigai into their lives, and that could be one of the reasons that goes into why they're living such long, healthy, happy lives. Do you think the other factors such as diet, maybe climate and other things are more important than Ikigai, or do you think maybe your mindset and your reasons for living are what maintain that healthiness for such a long time?
It's probably both, to be fair. You probably won't, like the people who live the longest will have both if they're only healthy but they don't have purpose in their life. I do think that shortens their life no matter how healthy you are. If you don't have the right purpose and social elements to your life, then like regardless of your health or of your diet and exercise, like your health won't be as good. So I think having a purpose does help people live longer. Like I think a lot of people die like quite shortly after they retire because they kind of give up on, like they don't have something to live for anymore. So even though it seems as a good thing that you don't have to work anymore, it's kind of like you don't have to do anything anymore. You might as well just, like pack it in.
Yeah, your body.
But yeah.
Yeah, I had a job like late last year for a few months, and there was a guy called Brian who was like the manager of this bar. Basically, it was only like a small like cafe, like bistro, like restaurant sort of bar, and he's fucking like 79 or 80, and he's moving around like he's fucking 60. And like, I was thinking, like, how's this geezer still doing that when my granddad's only like 6 years older and he's just a bit more crepid and like can't walk very well. But it kind of reflects perfectly what you just said. And like, do you think it comes down to like biology, like especially in terms of like animals reproducing, like they're going to be maybe at them like at their, what would you say? The animals are going to almost be at the like peak conditions for when they're in that reproductive stage of their lives. Like humans get into their peak performance when they're like, is it 30-ish, should we say?
Yeah.
And that's usually, well, in modern day, that's kind of when you have kids, but maybe it was a bit younger before, but it seems like biologically we're peaking ourselves at the time where we need to protect our children and make sure that the succession of our genes is carried out. And then when you lose a purpose like that, you're just gonna fucking peel over, maybe. It's a bit sad.
Yeah. I do think, I'm not sure how much research or how much we actually understand how kind of your psychology and your consciousness can actually directly affect your health. It's probably an area where there's new stuff coming out, but yeah, I do absolutely think that what I just said, your psychology and stuff can have a massive impact on your physical health, and your lifespan being one of those things it has a big impact on.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's a bit of a dark term, but like people that kind of are really depressed and commit suicide, like I feel like definitely a common theme that they all feel is a lack of meaning. Like they don't have this sense of purpose in their life. And that kind of, obviously there's probably like a chemical imbalance that pushes people to get into that state of mind, but not having a meaningful life makes you sad and like depressed, and like you're just going to be unhealthy from that. I think you're going to be unhealthy directly and indirectly. Like, I feel like your body is just going to be weaker, but also because you're in that state of mind, you're not going to work out, you're not necessarily going to eat as well as people that are happier. So it's a bit of a fucking double-edged sword.
Yeah, that's true. It's like I heard Andrew Huberman say that there's really close relationship. Like, basically everyone who commits suicide has a dysregulated sleep pattern. Like, they're waking up or going to bed at weird times, and it's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem. Like, are they depressed because they have a messed up sleeping pattern, or have they messed their sleeping pattern up because they're anxious and depressed? But yeah, it does seem that it kind of goes both ways. There are physical factors that influence how you feel mentally, and then there are mental factors that influence your behavior, and that goes on to affect how you feel physically. And also, it doesn't necessarily have to affect your behavior before affecting your health. I think there probably is direct relationship between, like, the psychological elements can directly affect your health, regardless of your actions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would kind of think myself, I'd sway more to the side of that your actions would influence your psyche more, like, rather than your psyche influence your actions. I'm not saying that 100%, 100%, like with 100% like certainty, but I've thought about it in the past, and then I saw a clip of 50 Cent saying, he said something along the lines of, like, he believes that depression is a luxury, and that sounds kind of weird, like, what the fuck? But he framed it in terms of, like, when you're down and out and you've got like fuck all money, or you've got like real responsibilities and it's hard for you to get by, all you're fucking focused on is action and getting after it, getting a job, making sure there's money on the table and there's food on the table and there's a roof over your like family's head. You don't have time to simply think about how shit your life is, or like you don't have time to think, oh, I could be doing this, and like, oh, I missed that opportunity, because the time you have in your life is simply spent on making sure that you're alive and your family's alive. And I think, I don't know the statistics at all, but I would kind of assume that suicides have definitely gone up compared to what they used to be a few hundred years ago. And I think that's because more people have time on their hands, and they're not restricted by the forces of nature that make them like be on alert at all times of the day to make sure that their family's protected and like other things like that. So I'd say the action is kind of more so important than the psyche. Although I'm definitely not disregarding the psyche, because I know it's just a rabbit hole that it's been hard to figure out, and it's still getting figured out by scientists and all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely agree with what you said there, but it's interesting how it links into this Ikigai concept, because basically the argument there that I agree with is that people can have less fulfilling and less happy lives because their quality of life is better and they don't really have to struggle. Like, that can reduce their quality of life. But when we talk about this Ikigai thing about like choosing your career based on certain aspects, like the people back in the day who were just fighting for survival, like they wouldn't have really that much choice over their career path. They wouldn't get such a luxury to be able to do what they love and really experiment and find things that they're good at and make sure they always have a positive impact on the world and stuff like that. Like, they're just concerned kind of with getting by, and they just kind of have to choose something out of necessity. But kind of in that struggle and in that responsibility being more important, like, they actually have more meaningful lives, even though their jobs might not be as enjoyable. So perhaps in the modern day, because we're kind of so spoiled for choice about things, like, say, you know, feeling like we need to do something that we love in order to live a happy life is kind of adding an extra barrier to living a happy life, rather than just being forced into it or having to take responsibility.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm not an expert on Japanese culture at all, but from like the things you see in the media and like movies and shit, it seems like Japanese people are very disciplined, and they kind of give a lot of effort to everything they do, no matter what it is, which is very respectable. And I think, like, hats off to them. But I think like that's kind of maybe influenced Ikigai a bit. Like you said, I think maybe like the Japanese culture, maybe they do sacrifice doing what they love because they think that they need to do this and do it with 100% effort. And then maybe they kind of program themselves to love something that they don't actually love. So maybe that's sort of what influenced Ikigai a little bit, in my mind anyway. Yeah, but even saying that though, I'm not too sure how prevalent Ikigai is in Japan today, but I'm pretty sure like Japanese people have like one of the highest suicide rates from what I've seen briefly, like in the past. That might be because Ikigai's been lost, or I don't know. Like, it's probably a lot of different factors to it, but I thought it was a bit interesting to see this kind of idea of Ikigai, and then the realization that realistically there's a lot of suicides in Japan because people are kind of depressed.
Yeah, the narrative I've kind of heard about that is like the reason people are so depressed is because they're like really overworked, and they have to,
right?
Like, there's a lot of pressure of them from their family or whatever to work really hard, and then they work really long hours, and then that's what makes them depressed. Like, that's kind of the narrative I've heard about it. You know, I'm not sure exactly how true that is, but you know, it sounds plausible. But maybe there's other factors as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough, to be fair. Yeah. But also, another thing about Ikigai, like, saying all these things, you might think that you need to find your love and kind of stick with it for the rest of your life. This guy was saying, when I was researching, he was like, Ikigai is like an active entity. It changes with the flow of time. Like, you need to remain in a constant flow and respond to what the world needs. So you might have an Ikigai for a while, and then it might change to something else. Which kind of, I don't know, it kind of seems to defeat the purpose of Ikigai a little bit in my mind. Like, what's the point of kind of pursuing what you love with the like anticipation that you're gonna have to change and do something else, and then go through the struggle of finding something else that you love, that the world needs, that you're good at, and that you can get paid for.
Yeah,
So I guess that might be probably just a natural force of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, we spoke about the different steps and like the difficulty of the different stages, and then like you were saying there, after going through all that difficulty to find one thing, like the asterisk says, oh yeah, you have to do that for the next thing once you get. But so yeah, but I do think there is something to be said about, in terms of purpose, having a purpose for a period of time that you really commit yourself to, and kind of going all in on that. And I think if you do that, then you will get to the point where you feel like you've done everything you kind of set out to do with that purpose. And then at that point, it seems like a bad thing to have to go back to this drawing board and kind of come up with the next thing that you're going to pursue. But I think that is just that's just life. Like you have to, you've worked towards something, you achieve it, and then you got to go on to the next thing. Like, I think, so yeah, I do kind of agree that your purpose will change over time. And perhaps that could be in the same career path. Like, for example, at the start of your career, your purpose might just be trying to gain financial freedom for yourself and for your family. But then once you've kind of gained that financial freedom, like your purpose might shift more to helping people. And that could be in the exact same career path. And it could be, it shifts to helping people in your company, trying to raise them up more. And then it can maybe shift to trying to have a broader impact on the world as a whole. And those three things, those different purposes, they could all hypothetically exist in the same career path. But I think it is important to kind of have maybe like one overall guiding principle to help you move forward. And that is something that I think it's healthy for it to change over time, and it should change over time, providing that you are successful in the things that you do. Because once you're successful, you need the next thing that pushes you. And maybe some people find kind of a lifelong thing that pushes them. But I think even within that, on like a small level, like it will change, even if kind of the overall objective stays the same. Like the kind of niche that it operates in will change over time. Perhaps like even if you work at the same company, your job will change over time. So it kind of orients towards different things. So I don't think it necessarily requires completely changing career paths at different points, but yeah, I think it is healthy for your purpose to change over time.
Yeah, that's quite a relevant point, actually. I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, to be fair, it's probably quite improbable that you're going to find a person that has the same job and has the same love for it for their whole life. Maybe, I was going to say, are they the lucky ones, or would you say maybe they're the unlucky ones because they never had the chance to experience anything else?
I think if they've lived their satisfying and meaningful life, then you can't really critique it.
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing that was mentioned by that guy, Tim Tamashiro, he said, like, if you want to incorporate Ikigai, just start small. I mentioned it earlier, but he was like, put it simply as, you've got a 9-to-5 job, that's 8 hours in the day, and then you've got 8 hours that you sleep, but you've also got another 8 hours of free time, let's say, although that free time will be kind of cluttered by grocery shopping, working out, traveling and shit like that, but you still have a good 4, maybe at least hours a day where you can pursue your Ikigai. And maybe that's more appropriate for today's day and age, where although you do a job, try and find a job that satisfies you to a decent level. And I think that satisfaction barrier will be lowered if you realise that you have a lot of spare time outside of work, and then you can pursue something else that you do really enjoy.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the way to go about it in today's day and age.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that's the more responsible way of going about it, being able to, you know, not just say, oh, I'm not going to do anything until I find what I really love to do, and you just kind of doss about. And I don't think that's, you know, it can act as a bit of a cop-out, like, oh, I'm not doing anything with myself because I haven't found what I love to do and I don't love doing anything. But it's kind of a cop-out because you're not working hard. Whereas I think it is good to kind of learn to take responsibility and work hard, even if that means doing a job which you don't necessarily enjoy. But then the responsibility is also on you to use that free time that you have to push towards what you find meaningful towards yourself. And, you know, I feel like with the different, like I was saying, how your purpose can change over time, but like in the same career. And I think with the Ikigai thing, like your purpose can change between those like 4 pillars that you talk about. Like in the beginning, it might just be a thing of like like at some point, your purpose might just be to do this thing that you're really passionate about and go all in on it. And then for another thing, you might think, yeah, I'm talented about this. My purpose is going to be to see how much of that potential I can realize. And then for another thing, it might be like, I want to make as much money and become as financially free as possible from this pursuit. And all these things, they can act as primary purpose within itself. And do you think it's a better idea to, I kind of think it's a better idea to kind of focus on like 1 or maybe 2 of these things at a time rather than trying to achieve them all at once. And I think that kind of works with how your purpose will change over time.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. Are you kind of saying something like each pillar of Ikigai can have its own activity almost, and then that creates an Ikigai life? So like you do a hobby that you're good at, and then you do a job that you're good at, you do a hobby that you love, and then blah, blah, blah. And then those collectively create an Ikigai life.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess like the way you put it there, it could act concurrently where you're doing your job that you're good at, which is getting you paid, and you're doing something that you love as well. But at the same time, I don't think it necessarily, like for a period of time, you can just be fully committed to, let's say, making as much money as possible. Yeah. And then and you can kind of neglect the other things for a period of time. And that'll probably bring you more opportunity in the future. Or you could say like becoming really good at something. Right. Like you could just sacrifice the rest of it. Just that's your one purpose for a period of time. A part of me feels like that's a better strategy than trying to optimize them all at once. And maybe it seems a bit idealistic to me to optimize it all at once. But I guess if you work hard enough and do the right things, then over a large enough period of time, you might be able to achieve that ideal life. Yeah.
No, I think that's a better way of doing it, actually. Because if you think about Ikigai, you're never going to be doing all 4 things at once, I don't think. Like, I think it's impossible. Like, you might be making music and, like, you'll be loving it and doing it, but in that moment, it's not what the world needs, and you're not making money off it in that moment. But over the space of a month, you get all 4 pillars completed. Whereas what you're saying is think about Ikigai maybe over a lifetime, and then for a certain period of time do one, certain period of time do the other, and then over a lifetime, that's what creates Ikigai. And that seems more achievable, I'd say.
Yeah.
And it kind of breaks it down almost and makes it easier to create smaller goals, achieve them, and work your way up. Get up, Pete. Nice one, mate. You should write a book.
Maybe one day.
As long as you're passionate about it, it's what the world needs, and like you love it and you're good at it. And you can
we'll see if all those things align.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't really think I've got anything else to add, to be fair. Do you have anything to add?
To be honest, I think this is a good place to end the episode. Just mainly focus on Ikigai. There's different things about just purpose more in general that I think would be good to talk about in another episode. But yeah, I think that's good for the episode about Ikigai.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed that. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Appreciate it if you made it all the way to the end. I know every single person does. I hope.
YouTube analytics say otherwise, K-Lock.
It's currently 6:26 in the evening. That is the end of episode 24. Thanks again. Please go check us out on Spotify, like and subscribe, all that shiz. We'll see you next time, I guess.
Peace.
Bye.